Texas. Actually, I tried to fix it kind of first. That's wrong.
I'll do my best, okay?
Do you want me to walk? I don't want to.
Well, I have a different viewpoint, so.
Do we have, okay, we got that, so we're good. Good evening. How's everybody doing? Appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I always like to see a big crowd. And we will get started. So it's 6:02 and I will call the meeting to order. And we'll call the roll. Here.
Here.
Here. Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, item 1. We will consider bids, wet demolition and clearing of 17 and 9 West Main.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
How are you, sir? I don't know that your mic is on.
Can you hear me? There we go. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may recall at the bid opening last month, we had 5 bids. The low bid was $132,500 by Total Demolition Services, and the high bid was $450,840. Since then, staff has reviewed the bids. We're familiar with the low bidder, talked to them, have checked their references. They're a sizable contractor. At this time, staff recommends the award to go to Total Demolition Services located in Oklahoma City. That would be for the alternate number 1 in the amount of $132,500. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions? No? And my assumption is the reason we put this on special call tonight was to get this done faster.
Correct. Yeah, it was just an opportunity to
Absolutely.
get it going and not wait till the end of the month. So, yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Appreciate that. I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Mark and Darren snuck in there, second. All righty, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 1, at staff's recommendation. We will call the question. Motion carries 7-0. Item 2, consideration of approval of a transfer of previously conveyed real estate property from South Central Industries, Inc. to Southern Point Community, LLC. Andrea, it's your turn. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Several years ago,
the City Commission conveyed property that the city held to South Central Industries for the purpose of building residences for their clients who have developmental and intellectual disabilities. SCI has since been able to put together a low-income housing tax credit program for the purpose of building those residences. The administration of this project would be easier if it was held by a separate LLC in which SCI would retain a majority ownership. SCI has come to the City Commission to ask for approval of a transfer of the land that was previously conveyed to them, that it be transferred to that LLC in which SCI retains the ownership, and that the same covenants and restrictions would be applied there as well. So it would still be under the management of SCI, under a different LLC, however, and still for the very purpose of building residences for their clients. And with us this evening is the Executive Director of SCI, if the City Commission has any particular questions about this approval of transfer as required by the covenants.
Anyone got questions for either Andrea or Tina? Don't see any questions. A quiet bunch. You must have explained it well. With that said, is there a motion?
Move to approve item 2.
I'll second.
Thank you, sir. Daniel and Travis. Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 2. We'll call the question. And motion passes 7-0. Item 3 is a work session on homelessness in Shawnee. And Andrea, the floor is yours again.
Thank you so much. We as in city staff and community members, select community members, have put together a rather comprehensive overview of the latest activities that are happening with the homeless mitigation program. This evening, we will explore responsibilities, activities, and the needs of the various city departments and the community involved in homelessness mitigation in our community. You will hear from the city's homeless program coordinator, law enforcement, code enforcement, the fire department, public works, and also from our community members, all working to address multifaceted challenges that are contained within the topic of homelessness. Through this presentation, we aim to showcase what has been done, what remains to be done to effect positive change, and then also how we can create a city where homelessness is met with proactive and effective responses. I know I'm not telling you anything new when I say that the topic of homelessness evokes the strongest of emotions at either end of the spectrum. It is evidenced by the robust attendance you see this evening, the interest generated by the downtown meetings between the property owners, businesses, and the city, and also the very passionate commentary on Facebook and other social media. There's certainly a high level of responses that were provided by the citizens to our citizen survey this year, and homelessness was singled out as one of the very, very important issues that needed to be addressed by the city. The short answer to who is affected by homelessness is everyone, every single one person in Shawnee. I want to acknowledge that homelessness truly is an issue that we're all grappling with. Everyone is doing what they can. However, alone, not a single entity, not one citizen, and not one business can really tackle this very difficult issue. All of us are affected, from downtown business to property owners citywide, from those who shop in Shawnee, those who visit the library, families and kids in our parks, visitors who come here for food and entertainment. Homelessness also occupies a tremendous amount of many city employees. Even though homelessness and homeless mitigation is not one of the core functions that the city provides. Of course, the city's homeless program coordinator works on related issues full-time. However, between the city attorney's office, code enforcement, fire chief, fire marshal, police chief, their management staff, and then the city manager's office, the city averaged another 1,000 hours over the course of the last fiscal year. In addition, fire and police respond to about 10 fire incidents and 36 police incidents solely related to homelessness every month. Through the time and associated resources the city expends, all of Shawnee taxpayers are truly impacted by this. Understanding common misconceptions of homelessness is crucial for developing truly effective strategies. It's important to approach this very complex issue with a comprehensive, passionate, but also realistic view. Homelessness affects people of all ages. It includes families with children, youth, and older adults. Family homelessness in particular is a significant concern that often goes unnoticed, because some of these families are simply couch surfing until they no longer have a couch to surf. One of the biggest misconceptions is also that people experiencing homelessness have chosen this lifestyle. There may be a few for whom this lifestyle was a conscious choice, but that is not the majority. In reality, homelessness often results from a complex interplay of factors such as job loss, domestic violence, mental illness, addiction, and unaffordable housing. While some homeless individuals may engage in survival behaviors that are against the law, the vast majority are not involved in dangerous and criminal activities, but are they themselves subject to often violent crimes. Another common misconception stems from the idea that offering food and shelter will create a magnet effect. However, research has shown that providing food, shelter, and also support services actually reduces homelessness and improves overall community well-being. While shelters are essential for immediate relief, they do not address the root causes of homelessness. Long-term solutions involve combinations of affordable housing, support services, and addressing some systemic issues. Many assume that homeless individuals are not motivated to work or improve their situation. In truth, numerous factors, including mental health issues, lack of job opportunities, systemic barriers, can contribute to the inability to secure stable employment. And before we delve into the overview of citywide activities related to homelessness, I would really like to call out some of the numbers that drive up housing instability within Shawnee. Relative to both the state of Oklahoma, but also nationwide figures, poverty rate and housing costs in Shawnee are high. This combination of limited financial capacity and higher than proportionate cost of housing is reflected in our lower home ownership rate. This combination also increases individuals and families' potential risk of being unable to make rent or mortgage payments, which would subsequently lead to their loss of housing. And as stated earlier this evening, you will hear from the city's homeless program coordinator, from our law enforcement, code enforcement, fire department, public works, and also community members. We will conclude the presentation with an overview of upcoming activities. And with all that said, I would like to turn the presentation over to our very own homeless program coordinator, Ms. Erica Genti.
Actions to be Well, good evening. Within the realm of the Community Development Department and the homeless program, there are particular perspectives. As we stand up or stood up this program, or reinstituted it about a year ago, the main goals were to facilitate the provision of unified services, provide a unified response, and to do that in a way that provides a strategic approach that is not just short-term but long-term. We did this using not only one paid staff member within the Community Development Department, which is Erica, our homeless program coordinator, but a multitude of different service providers in the community that have coalesced together, and a number of volunteers in the community. Within that, you can see that as far as roles and responsibilities, things that we are trying to take the lead on. First and foremost is building a continuum of care, which is a federally acknowledged and state acknowledged program that provides a coordinated response to build a roundtable of providers and to coordinate these solutions and services. The providers that we have in the roundtable at this point have done an amazing job, but they are truly volunteers working together and nonprofits pooling their resources to provide a better response than what we've had in the past. Within that, though, there are still a number of needs. Some of those Andre already mentioned. Housing. Housing is a wide topic, but it means permanent housing, it means transitional housing, and it means immediate shelter. That can take the place in terms of organized camping, that can take the form of hotel stays, that can take the form of transitional housing, either through, again, designated camping or similar shelter, or through actual housing, and then permanent housing and placement in terms of either rental or owner occupied. In some cases, that may mean down payment assistance, rental assistance, or other things. But those are some of the needs with regard to that. Storage of items. We have a number of unhoused individuals in the community who have a number of belongings, and where they go, the belongings go with them. Trying to provide permanent storage where they can have that secure so they don't have to carry all of their belongings with them, allows them to have a sense of safety. It gives them an opportunity to have access to that at regular intervals, at regular times, but also gives the community a chance to get some of that material and those items off the street so they aren't just left everywhere to clean up. Aside from that, one of the biggest needs is continued proactive messaging. We've tried to be diligent about that. We will continue to try and share what we're doing, what's going on with different individuals and the struggles they deal with, but also how people can be involved. Aside from that, one of the things we specifically want to talk about as we go to the next slide is the continuum of care. It's one of the biggest tasks that we're working on at the staff level. Thank you. The continuum of care provides a overall plan and a coordinated response to the homeless situation in the community. Right now, our continuum of care stretches in what we call the balance of state. It stretches geographically from Seminole County out to the Panhandle. So our continuum of care includes not only Shawnee, but Seminole, Midwest City, Edmond, Woodward, Alva, Guyman, and communities in between. Most of the funding that continuum of care receives goes to a handful of domestic violence shelters and other activities. Providing our own continuum of care and having that approved gives us an opportunity to go after state and federal funds on our own, separate from those other groups. And it gives us an opportunity to provide additional activities and resources to provide case management and wraparound services in the long term. Essentially, it formalizes the roundtable and becomes a more coalesced organization. It gives us an opportunity to do a better job at intake, providing the necessary support services, but also getting a better role in placement of people in the long term and having an access route to funding, not only for federal funds, but also to help individual groups within the continuum of care go after funds as well.
Hello there, Commission members, Mr. Mayor, members of the community. My name is Erica Genti. I'm the Homeless Program Coordinator for those of you that don't know me. My first slide is really boring. But honestly, it's the reason why most of the people have come here. They want to know about the money, where it's coming from, where it's going, what and on who it's being spent. Some people want more money spent, others want no money spent. So we're going to start by looking at the homeless program's checkbook. First thing we're going to talk about is funding. As was mentioned, there is one full-time employee paid for by city funds. That's me. Everything else is donated. We've applied for grants. In 2021, we were able to get a COVID-era grant for about $254,000. We didn't receive a grant in 2022, and again, we didn't receive a grant in 2023. Volunteers are the backbone of this program. It's what makes this thing run. According to U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, to date, about $353,000 of volunteer labor has been donated to this program. If you were a volunteer with the program, would you stand up? Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Right now, I only have about 25 volunteers that are making this sucker go. Then there's the members of the Homeless Roundtable group who have donated work boots and work clothes and interview clothes, bikes and repairs, deposit assistance, medication, wheelchairs, medical devices, and furniture to move in. To date, the value of their donations is about $22,000. If you are a member of the Roundtable, would you stand up? Or raise your hand. Hey. All right. Hi there. Then we have lots of service providers that come into the Homeless Resource Center and help provide services. Just this year, about $7,000 was donated between volunteer labor and the cost of documents for things like birth certificates and IDs. Then there's things that are difficult to put a money amount to, like the health department that comes once a month to provide services, the people who come and do haircuts, or job assistance, or mentoring, or mental health. And then there's operating the Homeless Resource Center. As I mentioned before, everything is donated. All of the labor, all of the meals, all of the supplies by volunteers, roundtable members, and members of the community. To date, the total hours, meals, and supplies donated to the Resource Center sits around $260,000. And then there's other donations that I can't put a value to, like clothing and blankets and first aid supplies and things like that. So to date, since I've been here for about the last year and a half, about $482,000 worth of labor, meals, and supplies have been donated by the members of this community to the homeless program. Next up, we have partnerships, which are vital in this community. This is where the work of solving homelessness happens. A couple of our most important partnerships are the Shawnee Homeless Roundtable that I mentioned. It's comprised of about 40 organizations made up of faith organizations, nonprofits, governmental, and tribal entities that are all united in this effort to work on homelessness. Together, we have decreased a duplication of efforts and increased the effectiveness of those efforts. We have identified and filled gaps in our system and planned and implemented services. We've worked to assist clients with IDs, legal issues, medical and mental health, substance abuse, transportation, and employment and housing. We've brainstormed new ideas. And like Ryan said, this is forming the foundation of that continuum of care. We also have the newly formed Native Homeless Alliance. Using data that we collected, we identified a disproportionately high number of Native Americans in our community who are experiencing homelessness. We brought the tribes together to work on decreasing that capacity. They decided to create the Native Homeless Alliance. They refer to each other, help people from every tribe, and they can identify and fill gaps in their system that they have funds to deal with and come up with new ideas. And they have set this incredible goal of decreasing that disparity by 50% within the next year. This is not only good for Native Americans, but this is good for Shawnee as well. We've applied for 4 AmeriCorps Vistas. VISTA stands for Volunteers in Service to America. They will focus on housing, employment, case management, and healthcare. Hopefully, if we get approved, they'll be here around September 1st, which will quadruple the speed with which the homeless program is able to grow. The value of their labor is about $166,000 a year, and we get them for 3 years for free. Some of the essential services that we are increasing are street outreach and case management services, so we can make contact with people, help remove the barriers to housing and employment, connect them with mainstream resources like food stamps and Sooner Care, and move people out of homelessness. Okay, next slide. This one's a little bit more interesting because it discusses what we are doing to make the situation in this community better, both for the people who are living on our streets and the people who have street addresses. First thing we need to do is address shelter capacity. We only have one shelter, that is the Salvation Army, and due to COVID and other reasons, they ended up cutting their capacity in half. So now they can only hold about 5 women and 11 men and 2 families. In addition, they are a high barrier shelter, making it difficult for many people to even be able to stay there. Our city codes don't allow for a new shelter to be built within the city, or for us to be able to meaningfully expand the shelter that we have, so we need to get creative. Some of our creativity has led to designated camping or sanctioned encampments. This is a place where people can pitch a tent and live without the threat of being forced to leave. It has sanitation like bathrooms and showers and trash. And this is where we can bring in those intensive services and case management so that we can help people move out of homelessness. Like it is safe parking. This is a place for people who are living in their cars to park safely and not have to be worried about being moved along. It also has sanitation and intensive services. We also need to come up with some new ideas, some alternative safe housing arrangements that are low barrier, that can accommodate partners and pets and possessions, like maybe a shelter on a bus that can hold 20 people, or a sponsor shelter where somebody can live in the back of a business and work in the front, or they can live in a house that they have been hired to renovate. We talked a little bit about personal storage, but I want to expand on that a little bit. Secure place to store their personal belongings is essential. Not only does it decrease the amount of stuff they have to carry around with them, but it decreases the amount of stuff that's all over our city streets. We're working on identifying possible locations, getting donations of poly carts, but we're also going to need more volunteers to make this thing go. So, how many of you drive a pickup truck? Not that many. Okay. Oh yeah, more people. How many of you would be okay with going to Atwood's, filling the back of it up with $1,000 worth of stuff, going to Walmart, parking it for 8 hours while you work? Oh, no hands. Because you wouldn't be expecting any of it to still be there, right? This is a situation that is encountered every day by every single person who lives on our streets. Without a secure place for their belongings, they risk losing everything if they go to work, if they go to the doctor, if they seek help for mental health or substance abuse. Some of those belongings include important documents like birth certificates and IDs. Some of them are family heirlooms, like the mother that we have, whose 15-year-old daughter committed suicide, and she only has a few precious mementos left of her child. To many, those items just look like they have no value and they should just be tossed away as garbage. But when you only have a few things, those things hold immense value. What is so precious to you that you would run into a burning building to catch, to get out. In my family, we have a ring. It's been passed down for generations, from my great-grandmother to my grandmother, who gave it to my mother, who passed it on to me, and I bestowed on my daughter. It's just a little ring. It has a tiny chip of a diamond in it, but its value is immense. Think about what is so precious to you that it would devastate you if it was lost. Imagine what if what was most precious to you was viewed as trash by most. Now imagine that if every trip to the doctor, every time you tried to fill your medication, apply for a job, you risked losing that thing that is so valuable to you. How motivated would you be to leave it? Storage will enable people to be able to go to work and attend appointments without fear of their belongings being stolen. It is a significant tool for helping people get back on track. And it keeps our streets clean. Recidivism, that is a really fancy word for that revolving door of arrest and release cycle. We're working to decrease that cycle. The cycle where people get arrested, they go to jail, and they have to pay for every day they spend in jail. Then they get fines, then they get released. But they can't pay those, so then there's a bench warrant, and they go to jail. They have to pay for every day that they spend in jail. They get fines, they get released, and it goes around and around and around. One way that we can do that is by increasing community service sentences, giving them the ability to pay off their debt to society. And the way that we as citizens benefit is that things like downtown trash gets to get cleaned up, or the parks get extra help. One of our goals is removing barriers to employment. Some of these barriers include low educational attainment or lack of vocational training, mental health and substance abuse or physical disabilities, a criminal record, or limited access to transportation. Then there's the lack of access to a computer or the low levels of computer literacy that are required to search for jobs and apply for those jobs online. We're talking with employers about second chance employment opportunities because not everyone that has an offense is incompatible with work. Now, if you robbed a bank, you probably shouldn't get a job as a bank teller. But could you work for the park department? Probably. We're also working with legal aid to take low-level crimes and decades-old crimes and have them expunged. Like the guy who, when he was 18, went to get pulled over by an officer and decided instead a high-speed chase would be good. He's kept his nose clean. He's 45 years old. And that conviction, that on his record, makes it so he cannot get a job and cannot get housed. Another thing we're working on is employer-employee support to help people stay on jobs. And then finally, housing, which is the answer. Our objective is to remove those barriers to housing, like lack of affordable, suitable, secure housing in the right places. You know, if we put housing down here and the jobs are up there, what are you going to do, right? Maybe rental history is a problem. They don't have a rental history, or they have a poor rental history, or they have a history of evictions, or they have utility and rental arrears. Maybe their credit sucks. Maybe their employment history is sporadic, or they have a criminal background or a lack of references. Maybe it's how they look, or their race, or their age, or their gender, or a history of domestic violence. Maybe it's they have a large household, which nowadays is defined as over 3 kids. That's pretty funny, I thought. Or they're under 21. Now let's talk about the money to get in. First month, last month, and deposit. Utility deposits run about $2,500 for a 2-bedroom apartment or a small house. This is an unscalable mountain for people who are living in homelessness. They might have a job. They might be able to afford the rent and living, but they can't get there from here. To make matters worse, most landlords in Shawnee don't take third-party payments. So the organizations that are working hard to help people get the money they need to get in can't help people get up over that mountain. We're working with landlords to try and work through some of this, and also on some new ideas like shared housing, or sponsorships, or second chance housing, or looking at criminal offenses independently instead of just a blanket no. So now on to some of the most frequently asked questions that we get in our homeless program. But first I want to talk to you a wee bit about data. Quality data is vital to understanding and ending homelessness. Regular, accurate data at the local and national level is key. Our data in Shawnee is painstakingly collected and cleaned and analyzed. According to Built for Zero, Shawnee's homeless program met the national benchmark for what is considered quality data in less than 24 months, a feat that usually takes 5 to 7 years. Our primary data tool is HMIS, which is the Homeless Management Information System. It's augmented by the PIT count and program-specific data. HUD has really strict HMIS data standards. Communities use HMIS data to track homeless individuals as they access services in their community. And we're able to develop a rich data set on demographic data, services that they were provided, where they went afterwards. Okay, so now with the disclaimer, it's time to tighten up your seatbelts because we're going to get into some numbers because you asked. So first, are we making a difference? Absolutely. Shawnee's homeless population decreased by 30% in the first year, and it is trending steadily downwards. Since I started with this program, we've seen 479 clients. Currently, we have 115 that we are working with. In 2022, from the beginning of the year to August 1st, we worked with 226 clients and stabilized 53 of them. That's 24%. 2023, this year, for that same time period, we've worked with 159 clients and stabilized 46. That's 29%. Unfortunately, the tornado caused 39 more people to be added to our homeless population because of loss of housing. Either they were uninsured, underinsured, or they were renting and didn't get to benefit from anything after that. Or they lost their employment and subsequently got evicted because they couldn't pay. These are not people that we know that lost homes and were able to move in with friends or family or insurance paid for them to stay somewhere else. These are people that had no other option than the streets of Shawnee. Though Shawnee recovers from the tornado a little bit every day, climbing out of the hole is more difficult for people who were already on the edge and didn't have any resources. Our numbers peaked in June, and they are steadily going down. The grant funding that the city had in 2021 allowed for increased resources to aid in sheltering people, like emergency shelter in hotels and rapid rehousing, and sending people back home where they're from if they're stranded, and other temporary housing. With the loss of funding, those efforts are severely impacted. Progress is continuing, but it's slow. So one of the bigger questions is, if you say we're making a difference, why does it feel like it's getting worse downtown? Well, the downtown homeless population is more visible and more concentrated than it has ever been. This is due to several reasons. One is the increased activity of the code enforcement department. Dilapidated houses, falling down buildings, and damaged structures such as the Cinderella Hotel are being condemned and razed, and those structures were used as shelter by many people. And as a result, they could remain somewhat unseen. Though taking down the structures is absolutely right, and absolutely the best thing for Shawnee, it is leading to a more visible population downtown. Another reason is loss of wooded areas due to development and due to property owners who are clearing out or opening up those wooded areas. They provided privacy and decreased visibility. Many people preferred these areas because they could better avoid attracting attention to themselves, because maintaining a low profile is vital for your safety when you're homeless. Shawnee's homeless population hasn't grown. It's shrinking slowly. However, it has moved and become more visible and more concentrated downtown. People who previously were able to live safely have been dispersed, and now they're trying to find some relative safety in numbers in the lighted, visible areas of downtown. Violence against the homeless people by members of the housed community is common nationwide and, unfortunately, in Shawnee. They are more likely to become victims of violence than they ever are to be perpetrators of violence. Acts of violence are on the rise. More than 1 in 20 of our homeless have been the victim of an assault at the hands of a housed person. Almost half have been intimidated or threatened with violence. 6 in 10 have been verbally abused or harassed, and this is the tip of the iceberg. There's murder, assault with a deadly weapon, sexual assault, and sex trafficking. They're also less likely to contact PD when they are the victims of an offense because of fear that they won't be believed, of fear of retaliation by the offender. And when you're homeless, being labeled as a snitch is dangerous. You may have heard the rhyme, snitches get stitches. Did you know there's a second half to that rhyme? Or end up in ditches? This is the reality for people who are living on our street. Shawnee's homeless population is painfully aware of the hate that is directed at them by many members of the community. They know they are targets. They fear being victimized by those who are better off, and therefore they're seeking safety with those in similar circumstances. Some other factors that lead to more use downtown is Wi-Fi access at the library, which has an extended range because of a requirement of the grant for that Wi-Fi. But it's also an important tool for those attempting to survive and exit homelessness. It's an invaluable resource for those who do not have a phone data plan. I mean, if you face it, living in 2023 requires a cell phone and a data plan. You can't function without it. The homeless program has made a concerted effort to move as many services and resources to the Homeless Resource Center, generally with good success. There are a few service groups that have resisted this change. We're making some progress there as well, but we're also working on a meal operations ordinance to further encourage meal operations in an appropriate place. But even with those services moved to the Resource Center, many people cannot get there because of their age or their health and lack of public transit. And they can't leave their belongings like we talked about, or they'll get stolen. Are they shipping people in from other cities and from OKC and other places? This is one of the most common urban myths about the homeless population in Shawnee. They bus them here from wherever, is the common refrain that homeless program coordinators across the nation hear. The rumor in Oklahoma City is they ship them in from California. In Tulsa, they ship them in from Oklahoma City. In Dallas, they ship them in from Houston. The Oklahoman recently interviewed Dan Strawn, the director of Oklahoma City's Homeless Alliance, asking many of the same questions that Shawnee's residents are asking. Strawn states, "I think the reason this persists across the country is it allows people to other the homeless population and absolve themselves of responsibility of caring for our neighbors. Shawnee is no different than any other city. As we discussed, our data is painstakingly collected and cleaned and analyzed. It shows that about 8 in 10 people who are homeless in Shawnee are from the Shawnee area. Now, information isn't just gathered by saying, "Are you from Shawnee?" Now, during the initial intake screening, individuals are asked several questions like, what was your last zip code? Where did you graduate from high school? Or what was the last school that you went to? Do you have family members here? Do you talk to them, or are you estranged? Each of those questions is then designed to lead to further questioning so that we can paint a clear picture of where they're from and why they are homeless in Shawnee. It also tells us what resources they have, like do they have family members that we can place them with, and how best the homeless program can help. This approach helps provide us with quality data and eliminates the ability for individuals to claim that they are residents in order to try and get favorable treatment. For those who are not from Shawnee, questions include, why did you come here? What brought you here? Do you have family here? Maybe they lost a job and moved here to be with family and it didn't work out. Maybe their car broke down here and they became stranded. Maybe they're a victim of or fleeing domestic violence or sex trafficking. It is clear that Shawnee's homeless population is largely homegrown. In fact, there may be somebody in here who has a family member who is currently living on our streets. Our final question is, are we attracting more homeless people because of services offered? We hardly have any services, especially compared to Oklahoma City. A recent national study found that 75% of people are still living in the city in which they became homeless, and our data is consistent with this. There is no magic communication network among the homeless community telling people to come to Shawnee, and if there was, nobody would tell them to come to Shawnee. Besides, most can't get here. They don't have transportation, they have physical and mental disabilities, and they have roots and resources in their communities. The most common reason why somebody does come to Shawnee if they're not from here is that they lost a job or housing where they're from. They came here because they have friends and family who said you can come, and then it didn't work out. Or this is literally where the car broke down. We have I-40. We have lots and lots of traffic. Like the guy and his elderly mother who were on their way home to Colorado from vacation, and their truck broke down. They didn't have the money to fix it. By the time they got the money, he lost his job in Colorado. Because he lost his job in Colorado, he lost his home in Colorado. They have no friends or family in Colorado. It's just the two of them. They spent 8 months living in their truck in Shawnee before we were able to get them housed. And then finally, there's domestic violence, especially down Highway 9 out of Norman. When they flee, they zing down that highway till they reach civilization, which unfortunately is the Shawnee area. When I took this position, I saw that Shawnee had a unique opportunity to be the city that does things right. We're a small city. We're relatively isolated. We are the perfect ecosystem to grow something good. We can become an example to other communities. Shawnee is a place where solving homelessness is possible. I took this position not because I wanted to manage homelessness. I took this position because we could expand on proven methods, we could try out new ideas, and become the place that cities across the nation look to when they're looking for answers. I also took this position because I understand that homelessness affects everyone in the community. As a businesswoman, I understand how issues such as homelessness affect your business. As a parent, I understand how valuable a safe and family-oriented community is. As a city employee, I understand that my work must benefit all the citizens of Shawnee, regardless of where you live, work, or shop. I'm looking forward to another year of progress, and I'm really hoping that the next time we get together like this is to celebrate that everybody in Shawnee has a roof over their head. Thank you.
I would like to call on our police departments to give a report out.
Thank you, ma'am. How are you guys tonight?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. So law enforcement. The police department handles homeless calls like all other calls. We enforce the laws, protect citizens and their constitutional rights, and use our crisis intervention teams for outreach and education. The police department is only one step in the criminal justice system. We need strong state laws, city ordinances, and codes. We also need a strong relationship and understanding with prosecutors and courts. We all must be on the same page to fix problems. Alternatives to court-ordered fines are needed for those who are arrested and released because they have no ability to pay a fine. This can become a revolving door of arrest, release, warrants, and then release again. This becomes frustrating for the victims of crimes, the police, the court system. It also fails to create consequences for criminal activity. We are currently operating under a crisis intervention team grant. The federal government mandated that 20% of law enforcement officers at an agency must be certified in crisis intervention. Under this grant, we have certified 47% of the officers, and the goal is 100% by the end of 2024. We have also trained civilian staff in crisis intervention. There have been 55 civilian city employees trained to date. We will have more training sessions this year and next year. CIT teams patrol with a case manager from Red Rock. They do welfare checks on the unhoused, make referrals, do EODs or emergency orders of detention, and create safety plans. They also respond to 911 mental health related calls. With me here tonight, I would like to introduce Corporal Kevin Nichols, Corporal Josh Soward, and Counselor Sean Whitehead from Red Rock. This is a crisis intervention team. Patrol officers make extra patrols in areas that have a concentration of unhoused, and our detectives review videos and pictures to identify suspects of the crimes. Several questions seem to arise that I hear on a normal basis, which is, why can the police not have a patrol assigned just to downtown? We do not have enough police officers to assign officers to a specific street, business, or residence. We do assign officers by district, and they are responsible for everything in their assigned area. Why don't police hand out citations for trespassing? Oh, let me state too, we also use grants to pay officers overtime to saturate areas that have higher crime. We have other grants for that, like the Safe Neighborhoods grants. The owner or responsible party of a private property must sign a citation to charge someone with trespassing. And I'm going to let Joe give you the legal language when he does the next section. Why don't police hand out citations for misdemeanors when there are pictures or videos? A misdemeanor must be committed in the presence of an officer for that officer to take immediate action with an arrest or a citation. A picture or video does not place that crime in the presence of an officer. We do follow up with an investigation, and at that point, we hand that over to a prosecutor who then decides if charges should be brought against the suspect. Why are emergency orders of detention not used more? We do many EODs or emergency orders of detention, and a lot of it's done through our CIT team, and it's not even through calls coming in to the police department. It's them actually making contact firsthand. But I'm going to ask Sean from Red Rock to speak briefly about the criteria for an EOD and why all mental health issues do not meet that criteria.
Okay.
Sean?
How are you, Sean?
Good, thank you, Mayor. Sean Whiteside, been with the case manager with Red Rock for over a year now, working CIT now for 6 months. There are only 3 criteria we're allowed to use by law to EOD someone. One is if they have an intention to hurt themselves or kill themselves or somebody else. Those are 2 of the criteria, themselves and somebody else. The third one is if they are so incapable of taking care of themselves, not able to feed themselves or get into shelter or clothe themselves. I'm not talking about just being messy. It's like they actually cannot take care of themselves. That is the third one that we will EOD and make sure that they are able to take care of themselves before they're released.
Okay.
Anything else, we're not allowed to.
Thank you, sir.
I think we'll turn the next section over to Joe now. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, guys.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, members of the public, I will try and be brief. So we walked through just some of the legalities that are specific to state law and City of Shawnee ordinance with relation to what Chief was just discussing. First, I'll just reference the relevant provisions of our Code of Ordinances, specifically that no person shall enter upon or remain upon any public or private property or in any area or structure of such property when such entrance or remaining is plainly forbidden by signs, markings, or otherwise, or by verbal or written command of the owner, his agent, or employee, or by written or verbal command of city, state, or federal laws, ordinances, or officials. As Chief alluded to, this is what he is referencing when he says that the property owner must sign the citation. We do not have the authority as the city to determine whether or not an individual is trespassing on private property. That is the duty and discretion of property owner. And I think that becomes clear particularly when we discuss businesses. Looking at the next slide. Oh, I went too quick. There we go. Because we have to, and again, every time I'm up here, I'm talking about balancing. Talking about balancing the rights of the property owners. I'm talking about balancing the rights of the city. I'm talking about balancing the right of these citizens who find themselves unhoused. But we're also talking about the rights of the general public when we discuss public right-of-way. And when we talk about alleys, we talk about sidewalks, we talk about roadways, we're talking about public right-of-ways. So what is that? Well, it's an area where the public has a right-of-way easement, particularly sidewalks in the city, for reasonable public use. Public use of sidewalks makes the public either invitees or licensees as related to the property. So what does that mean? Well, use of public right-of-way does not equal a trespass. And again, use of public right-of-way does not equal a trespass. So when we talk about any one of us walking down the sidewalk on Main Street, that's not a trespass. But we are walking on private property. Private property that is subject to a right-of-way easement. So each of those business owners own the sidewalk in front of their respective business. But it is subject to an easement that allows the public to move freely up and down. So that right that each of us have is limited to our ability to go up and down. And we go back to the previous slide where it talks about what those limitations are, right? So these two things have to balance and coexist. Invitees are present for a mutual benefit, so that would be your business owner during business hours with an open front door. They are inviting people to come in and conduct commerce with them. Licensees are there for their own benefit. These would be people that are utilizing a public right-of-way in a legal manner without engaging in that commerce. Either way, it is not a trespass. What is something that can be enforced, and something that is enforced by our law enforcement, is when public right-of-way is blocked. It's no different than when a roadway is blocked. If a sidewalk or an alley is blocked, that is against our ordinances, that is against state law, and that is something that law enforcement in their discretion can take action against. One of the difficulties with that is not always knowing when someone is blocking that right-of-way, which goes back to the communication aspect that I know has been hit on many times in these presentations, that those things have to be reported so that the chief and the police department can react there too. And with that, I don't know who I'm turning it over to. Kevin or you?
Code enforcement?
Oh.
So, similar to Mason and the police department, code enforcement's perspective is largely based on enforcement of city code, ordinances. However, code enforcement's perspective is much more indirect than police or certainly the homeless program. And what I mean by that is code enforcement isn't responding directly to individual cases of homelessness or enforcing ordinances on individuals experiencing homelessness. Our interactions and communication is with property owners. And that's not to say that we don't have a role in this issue at all. Some of the property owners that we see in the code enforcement process are struggling with the issue of homelessness. And what I mean by that is whether that's individuals adjacent to their property or in some cases within the property causing damage, bringing in trash, vagrancy. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. but code enforcement makes an effort to communicate with the legally responsible party about the maintenance and condition of their property. And I know that that's been a point of confusion. We've had a number of folks who've called in about a complaint about cleanup, and it's actually their responsibility as the landowner. So they've kind of called code enforcement on themselves. And and even in cases where they're not self-initiated, whether they're initiated by staff on their own or a neighbor complains, whatever directive we give based on the ordinance, there's still frustration there, right? Because they view that punitive action when they aren't the source of the issue. So looking at code enforcement's role and responsibility, as I said, the department enforces the ordinances related to properties and structures, and when necessary, we post structures as unlawful to occupy. So looking specifically at needs, one of the bigger issues that we hear in residents' frustration throughout our process is their inability to prevent encampments or just general trash and debris associated with those encampments or those overnight stays. So we need something as it relates to camping and feeding ordinances on the books. Secondly, an obvious need is an alternative to the abatement process, right? So currently our only option is to move forward through the code enforcement process, and we'd really like to create something that's outside of that realm. That way, if we have an issue arise, that we have a third-party group that's able to step in and help those property owners out when a property needs cleaning, right? We need a program or a volunteer effort that provides something outside of the nuisance abatement and lien process that we currently use. Okay, so before I get too far into it, I wanted to show a little bit about what we've done over the last fiscal year. So in fiscal year 23, July to July, this past year, code enforcement had a little over 1,700 cases, of which 106 were dilapidated structures. Of that 106, 35 were demolished by either the property owner or the city. So of that 35, 9 of them were destroyed by vagrancy prior to demolition. And I'll show you what I'm meaning by that in here in just a second. But so that means we had 71 ongoing dilapidated structure cases entering this fiscal year at the beginning of July, and we've picked up several since then. So in addition to handling the dilapidated structures, we also post structures unlawful to occupy. So obviously there's another misconception point there. Sometimes they're related, but sometimes they're not. Unlawful to occupy also applies to structures that don't have utilities, right? Water, septic, or sewer, electric. These are properties with health and sanitation concerns. So in fiscal year 23, we also posted 80 structures as unlawful to occupy. And I have some pictures that I want to show you, but before I get there, I wanted to reiterate something. Code enforcement's scope of work really isn't as a first responder to homeless issues. And we get those calls on the regular, and our scope of work is to protect the citizens from safety and sanitation issues, right? And this is afforded through communication with property owners. So, one thing that we run into often is, code enforcement, people in buildings that shouldn't be there, vacant building. Why can't the homeless, or why can't code enforcement help with recourse against those homeless individuals? And that largely just isn't our role, because we communicate with the property owner and not those homeless individuals downtown. So I said I'd give you a couple of examples of vagrancy that we've seen here recently. This structure was posted as unlawful to occupy due to it not having utility services, no water, sewer, or electric. So it's supposed to be vacant, but it was illegally occupied. And you can see from the timestamp on the photo, it was posted and a citation was issued in early of October of 22. Later that month, you can see it was burnt, right? So those pictures are days apart. And this is one of the 9 that I mentioned that was tore down due to it having been burnt. So another example, this is more recent. This property was posted illegal to occupy for health and sanitation concerns. There was no utilities to the house. I showed the picture on the left because you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but they've ran an extension cord out the window and actually hardwired into the overhead service line. So there's no power going to the meter, but someone was brave enough to wire that extension cord directly into the overhead. And so the picture on the right shows us having posted that as illegal to occupy. Again, not supposed to have occupancy. I guess the picture on the bottom, sorry. The picture on the bottom is days later. So, and that building was burned and collapsed. These type of examples really highlight when normal code enforcement process is disrupted by something like those struggling with homelessness. Whether it's, arson or just unsafe electrical. All of a sudden it goes from a code enforcement case and potential abatement to demolition. You have fire department on scene, you have police now out of the equation, just, kind of resulting in more tax dollars spent. So, with that, I would get into frequently asked questions for code enforcement. Why does code enforcement come after the property owners, not the people causing the issues? First, I would say, we just heard PD and Joe kind of lay out trespassing. So if there's an issue with trespassing or breaking and entering, I'm not saying that that's not an issue, right? But it's not an issue that code enforcement handles. So we need to get that to the proper people. And secondly, when notifying code enforcement of a violation, the violation itself is based on an ordinance that's defined by the property conditions. So at the end of the day, the legal obligation to fix the property is with the property owner, not the occupant or the tenant. That even if they cause the issue, we see this in all rental properties. Second question, why does code enforcement not just run off the squatters? I mentioned this earlier, and to make this a short answer, largely on what Joe just talked about, right? Those individuals still have rights, and the legal owner of the property has to pursue the necessary process to secure the structure, prevent entry, and in cases of trespassing, pursue trespassing charges. That's not to say that code enforcement doesn't get into this a little bit, right? When we're securing structures or attempting to help landowners secure structures, we don't want to secure a structure with someone inside, right? We don't want to put plywood over the doors and over the windows with someone inside. So, code enforcement does go in and make sure that there's nobody inside when we're shooting plywood over the windows. But for the large part, that's not within the scope of what we're doing. Third question, what can be done about unlawfully occupied buildings when the homeowners cannot be contacted or the property owners cannot be contacted? The first thing is report it to us. Report it to us. There's a chance that it's already been reported and that it's within the code process. But if not, structures can be posted unlawful to occupy. Notice can be sent out to the owner to secure the structure. And, we're required to provide legal notice, but we can almost always secure that legal notice, whether that's through certified letters, certified mail. If the owner fails to comply with the notice, the city can proceed with abatement. And abatement can be a wide variety of topics, right? It could just simply be securing the property. And that it could go from that all the way to what we see earlier when I talked about demolition. So it just all depends on the condition of the property.
I'd like to call on the fire department next.
Thank you, ma'am. How are you, sir?
Good, sir. How are you?
Great.
From the fire department perspective, we've kind of narrowed this down to two different areas: fire prevention and suppression, and also public safety. Narrowing this down had us focus on a couple of different areas of our roles and responsibilities. The first one is fighting vacant structure fires. We've seen a significant increase over the last 2 years on the amount of vacant structure fires we've had, but we've also that led us to believe that we need to make more ready-to-go information for the public, not just for all the citizens, just so they know about fire safety. And also the plans for evacuation, that's a lot to do with our homeless population. Some of the areas we see them in, like in places where there's tall grass or in areas by rivers where there may be a floodplain, just so they know if these emergencies happen, that we can get them out of there quickly. That's one of the things we really need to focus on, is getting this information to them. Next slide, please. The information we have is from January 1st to July 25th of this year. The fire department responded to 3,489 calls. A large percent of them are medical calls. 217 were related to the unhoused. The area we see that was really shocking to us is the 78% of the fire calls were related to the unhoused. That's a large percentage of the fires that we respond to. Those fires are divided into what type of building they are, if they are occupied or if they're vacant. The vacant houses have increased 31% this year from what they were last year. We've always had vacant structure fires, but they just we've seen a large increase in them this year. And those are just areas of concern that we need to address, whether that's through public education or what that may be through. Next. Some frequently asked questions that we had is that we were asked how many vacant structure fires the fire department addresses every year. We had 61 in 2021, 62 in 2022, and 45 so far this year. Also was who investigates fires and possible arson. Fires within the city limits is our fire marshal and our deputy fire marshal, but outside of the city limits, that would be the state fire marshal. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions? No, sir. Thank you so much.
I would like to call in the Public Works Department for the next part of the presentation.
How you doing, Brad?
Good evening. The Public Works Department's responsibilities include managing, maintaining, and cleaning public facilities, parks, and restrooms. The greatest need is safety of the Public Works frontline workers and communication and collaboration among other departments. Mess it up. Yep. Down is up. The impacts of homelessness in Shawnee are felt throughout Public Works. Staff struggles to keep up with the need for increased cleaning services, and the department is quickly expending available resources to repair damages caused by willful vandalism. Several times over the course of the last year, health and safety concerns have also impacted our employees, in several cases leading to the loss of staff members. I will warn you of the graphic natures of the following images. This is what our staff deals with. This is at the Pioneer Library downtown. Some of these pictures speak of substance abuse, while others are of needless destruction and vandalism. The associated repair cost and time spent cleaning has far exceeded related budgets. You can see in that top right on the mirror that was waiting on staff on a Monday morning. Questions most asked of the Public Works Department are focused on why the city doesn't clean up Main Street, as well as alleys in downtown. Like that earlier question on trespassing, the difference between public property, public right-of-way, and public easements is not well understood, and I will turn it over to Joe to further explain.
Yeah, this is really just a continuation of what we've discussed previously, but when we're talking about sidewalks and alleys, we're talking about easements. They remain private property of the property owner abutting the sidewalk or the alleyway. And so those easements are held by the city for reasonable public use. Do not supersede the property owner's rights. It only grants limited use to the public. So the owner may reasonably limit that use by time and space with proper signage. We looked at that ordinance previously. So when we look at those legalities and the specific code references, property owners own subject to the rights of the public. And I think that that's really the key. Property owners own subject to the rights of the public, the sidewalk and alleys abutting the street and portions of the alleyways, along with neighboring property owners, and those owners are responsible for maintaining the cleanliness thereof. Shawnee Code of Ordinances sets forth that no property owner, occupant or agent of any property that abuts or adjoins any street or avenue in the city shall allow or permit any animal or vegetable substance, any tin, glass, or piece of iron, or any trash, mud, snow, ice, dirt, slop, refuse, matter of filth of any kind or description, whatever to accumulate or remain on any part of the sidewalk, abutting or adjacent to the premises owned or occupied by such person. What does that mean? Well, it means that if you or I have private property that abuts a sidewalk or abuts an alley, that it's our responsibility to make sure that weeds do not grow up. It is our responsibility to make sure that trash does not accumulate. It is our responsibility, unfortunately, just as it's the public works responsibility to clean up city facilities, to take care of the messes left behind by the unhoused. That is not a city obligation. That is our obligation as a property owner. That is a common misconception. So I don't have a frequently asked questions section for any of my presentations, but that is it. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions with relation to that the commission might have. Questions?
Don't see any. Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry.
We
I
got
had
one late
apologize.
one.
Yeah, I was thinking
all
on
right.
how to say this and just after speaking with so many of our property owners and the struggle that is, you know, maintaining and continuing to have to be responsible for this. Where does it stop? How do we, as our own city staff said, you know, we've had to shut down bathrooms at the library because we're not going to clean them up anymore because they keep getting torn up. And so why do we expect the same from our residents to keep maintaining and keep doing something? And I don't know why that. Yes, I'm sorry.
If I may suggest that we hold on to your question, because I think it will become clearer when we talk about next steps. Because you're right, it is not tenable. It is not tenable for the library. It is not tenable for our downtown property and business owners. So we will have to try a different approach. So if you would be so kind and hold on to that question until we get there.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So from all of the previous presenters, you've gathered that comprehensive homeless mitigation is really multi-departmental. The city manager's office is charged with fostering and supporting citywide collaboration of those efforts. It's very important to effectively communicate not just between the departments, but also to the public. Oftentimes, it looks like the city is just sitting on its hands and not really working towards a resolution. And as you've heard today, that is not the case, but it appears on the surface to be so. In general, the city manager's office is responsible for developing an action plan, monitoring its progress, and then eventually also transitioning the homeless program responsibilities to a nonprofit organization. And that may come as surprise to some, but as I had mentioned several times before, homelessness mitigation in all of its facets, housing, mental health support, substance abuse issues, and housing creation are not among the core functions that a city performs. So to succeed in this endeavor of standing up a homeless program and then turning it over, the city manager's office relies heavily on the departmental expertise. For code enforcement, to try to find a different approach to nuisance abatement. For the homeless program coordinator to think about approaches that are specific to Shawnee. The only thing anybody knows is that housing first is the only successful model. There are so many different entities who have tried so many different things to varying degrees of success. We are picking and looking and researching through everything that anybody has done up to this point, because we would like to avoid making those same mistakes. But again, housing is not our forte. It is not our field of expertise. As cross-departmental collaboration is ongoing, I would like to take this opportunity to focus on those additional specific activities that the city manager's office is driving forward. As you may have heard in prior conversations about homeless resources, at this time Shawnee really only has 23 shelter beds available, and we know from our point-in-time count that we have many more homeless than that. I am grateful for the Salvation Army and for those 23 shelter beds. I wish we had much, much more. In order to be able to curtail the camping on public property, which is that visible homelessness that we currently see in downtown, which has worsened, not the numbers themselves, but the visibility thereof. The city is actively working towards a designated campsite, which will serve as that immediate shelter. The area proposed for a designated site is Dockery Park, which due to the recent tornado has lost most of the remaining components of its former park infrastructure. The site has sufficient space, it has water, it has septic facilities, as well as electricity, and once decommissioned as a park, would also retain sufficient distance from schools, other parks, and residences as required by our own city code. The city is working towards, in addition to the designated campsite, the city is also working towards a permitting process for downtown feeding and meal operations. That is something that you had heard twice over this evening. Many of the groups who come to Shawnee to help homeless by setting up feeding operations have been gracious and have started coordinating with the Homeless Resource Center. We do have a few holdouts, and I do not believe that they fully understand how much additional resources it takes from not just the downtown property owners and businesses, but also from Public Works to then clean up the aftermath of those feeding operations. So we are absolutely working on a permitting process. Every time we believe we have a draft, we find another section within our city code that is in conflict, and then we pull it back. I think we've now had three false starts bringing this particular ordinance to the City Commission. Something that you have heard both from our homeless program coordinator as well as our police department is the need to decrease the recidivism. The city manager's office will be working with the help of the city attorney, with prosecutors and judges, to substitute some of these court fines with community service. We do not want to have no consequences, but we do want to have consequences that will make a difference for the previous offender and work for the benefit and the good of the community. And we do believe that community service fines can do that for us. And then, of course, most importantly, the city manager's office is actively working towards transitioning the city's homeless program to a dedicated nonprofit organization. We have a city commission that understands the complexity of the issue. We have department heads who understand the complexity of the issue. We are all working together. We are reaching out to our community. But at any point in time, because this is not one of the city's core functionalities, we may come to a point where this is not seen as a high priority, and then all of the work that has gone into the program thus far would be lost. So I would like to remind everyone what that core functionality of a city truly is, and that is public safety, transportation, water, sewer, sanitation, economic and community development, parks, recreation, and the cemetery. These are our core functions. Homeless mitigation is not among those, but I know that the City Commission felt very strongly in allowing the position of a homeless program coordinator to be created. You knew that this was important to the community. A well-functioning homeless program cannot be run with one person alone. Should we be successful in getting 4 vistas, we will have more case management and more outreach. But even then, 5 people cannot run a whole program. Erica has done a fantastic job facilitating among the various service providers that are already in town. But again, this is not a core function of what the city does. A well-functioning homeless program must absolutely include the wraparound services related to transitional and permanent housing to be successful. It must have a component that supports mental health, a component that helps in the recovery from substance abuse issues, and all of those services are out of our range and expertise as city staff. What you see on the screen are questions that were immediately posed when the conversation turned to the designated camping and shelter site. Allow me to answer them in the sequence they're shown. How quickly, you may ask, can we do this designated site now that it has been proposed? Legally, a site could be established very quickly by way of City Commission action. However, from a practical perspective, and particularly if we are aiming towards a successful site, certain planning activities and site preparations should occur well ahead of its usage to increase the likelihood of successful implementation. Other communities have set up designated sites within several months, and I'm certain that we can do so as well. And we certainly benefit from their experience. We even have checklists of what should be at such designated sites. They are already ready to go. But it is incumbent on us to put in the infrastructure that is required according to those checklists. In addition, our very own city code does require a few updates. Section 22.410 also calls for specific shelter requirements, including operations plan, on-site supervision, a management plan of the site itself, a code of conduct for those who are sheltered, adequate lighting and common facilities. Who operates such a site, you may ask? The site should be operated by a non-profit organization and their volunteers. At this time, a nonprofit to run the designated site operations has not yet been confirmed, but we are certainly working towards that end. What about rules? Again, City Code Section 22-410 provides certain minimum conduct requirements, even though we still have to do a few updates to that particular code section. Those are truly just the minimum standards. Through the planning of the site operation and through the planning of its management, I am certain that we will identify additional rules that will help propel this to success. And then, of course, what about security? Depending on the maximum permitted occupancy, on-site security may be required, is likely required. And it would either be provided by the nonprofit operator or a security contractor, because as our police chief stated eloquently earlier, we just simply do not have enough police staff to assign them to a certain area in town, any street, any site, any business, nowhere. We have districts to which we assign our police because that is what our resources dictate. I will introduce this section to our Shawnee community. As you've heard multiple times this evening, visible homelessness largely affects our Shawnee's downtown areas, impacting the overall perception and vibrancy of our city center, potentially deterring residents, tourists, and business traffic. It may lead to concerns about safety, sanitation, and of course the overall aesthetics of our public spaces, affecting local commerce and community engagement overall. Addressing homelessness in all of its complexity requires a holistic approach that combines those supportive services, affordable housing solutions, and largely collaborative efforts to create a thriving downtown environment for both city officials, downtown businesses, and residents alike. In terms of what is currently happening at the community forefront, given the degree of visible homelessness in downtown, the city, business community, and property owners have stepped up communication and related efforts. On one hand, the city has requested that those located or visiting downtown immediately report any suspicious activities or unlawful behavior to the Shawnee Police Department. Very often have we heard that police does not do anything, and then as we dig into the details of the call reports, we found out that police was actually not called. We truly can only do something about the situation when we are aware of it. So the going motto is see something, say something, because only then can we address an issue. A lot of the conversation there revolves around loitering, panhandling, mental health, and trespassing. Courts have proven over and over that loitering ordinances are extremely difficult, if at all enforceable. Panhandling is generally allowed unless it is aggressive. Again, if something like that was to occur, we hope that the affected person or somebody who observes it immediately reaches out to police. Mental health, you've heard from our officers earlier, and from Red Cross specifically, that there are only certain mental health episodes that really make those cases eligible for an emergency order of detention. And again, that requires for somebody to be a danger to themselves, to be a danger to others, or to be clearly incapable of taking care of themselves. And we do have some downtown homeless residents who are loud and profane, but none of those behaviors ever rise to the level of an emergency order of detention. Alternatively, downtown property owners have also pursued the formation of a downtown neighborhood watch group so as to provide one another support. These watch groups actively engage in patrolling downtown areas. With us today are owners of 2 Main Street businesses who would like to share their insight and expertise. I would like to call on Lee and Roger Rutherford to own and operate the Lunchbox, as well as Ms. Claudia Crow, owner and proprietor of Crow's Market. Lee, Roger, and Claudia, thank you so much for being here. Also with us is the new Shawnee Library branch manager, Courtney Giroux, who is available to answer any questions that we may have at the library once we get to the answers, a question and answer session. So with that said,
Very
I'm
good.
stepping away from the podium, and
You guys, Lee, you and Roger want to come up? How are you this evening?
I'm good. Thank you all for having me. Since I was extended this invitation, I've thought long and hard and even prayed about what I wanted to say. After being through this meeting tonight, I'm more defeated than I was when it started at 6 o'clock. I realize if you don't have any place to go, you don't have any place to go. If you don't have any place to go to the bathroom, you go where you can go. I get those things. As a downtown business owner, I struggle daily on the biblical aspect of the Christian aspect of what am I supposed to do and how am I supposed to handle this situation. So this is hard for me. It's hard for me to see my town like this. In December of 1965, my parents brought me home from the hospital to a little apartment building on Union Street that is still there, and for 56 of my almost 58 years, I've lived in this town. This is my town and I love it. And when I decided to have this crazy idea to open a business, I wanted it to be on Main Street. We have a problem, and it's our whole town has a problem. And I don't know what the answer is. The folks that I'm dealing with downtown, so if you don't know where the Lunchbox is, I'm at 217 East Main. I'm 2 doors down from the old antique mall. It was the Bison Theater back in the day. So literally right around the corner from my business is where it happens on a daily basis. The folks that are down there now they're different, Erica. They're not the homeless folks that were homeless when we bought the building in 2016. They don't seem to care. It's as if they know the rules don't apply to them because nobody's going to do anything to them. If I threw my trash out the back door every day at the end of the business day, you guys would be all over me. If I have pictures on my phone, I have picked up used condoms, I have picked up crack pipes, I've cleaned feces off of the street. Travis has helped me take care of that situation before, or Commissioner Flood, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to address you. I don't throw anything away unless I can tell it's been abandoned. I throw clothes away, I throw food away, I've thrown suitcases away. If they're not disgusting, I usually set them outside of the dumpster because someone might actually truly need it. I am 100% defeated because every meeting that I've gone to with the city, with the police, with whoever, and said, okay, if you do this, this, and this, then we can do this, this, and this. Well, that's all gone tonight. Everything you've told us to do, well, now we can't do this. Put signs up, call us, do this. Oh, well, now we're trespassing. You have a no trespassing sign, but if we go in, now we're trespassing or this. So everything you tell us to do and we do, then there's another reason why you can't do it. So I'll just keep cleaning up I'll be nice and say feces, but I'll just keep cleaning up the stuff that I do, because basically what I personally am gathering is you're just deal with it. Just deal with it. So, and I am 100% will help do whatever I need to do. I want to fix this problem. There's a lot of folks that are one tragic event from being like a lot of these folks that we see on the streets on a daily basis. You know, I could be one tragic event away from living in my car. So I'm not here to pass judgment on them or anything like that. I mean, we're all doing what we can do to get by day in and day out, and I get that. But it makes me really, really sad for my town. In the last month or so, Shawnee's been on the news twice. Once was for the Kids Space Park, which is really wonderful. I've taken my grandkids there and they love it. Today it was for what a pitiful state Main Street in Shawnee is. And which story do you think most people are going to remember? They're going to remember the one today about how bad Shawnee is. So I want to help. I'm willing to help. I'm sorry I have no answers. I'm very defeated, and it's going to take us all. It's not any one person's responsibility, but someone has got to lead the charge. And I feel like, in my opinion, that's you all. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Claudia Crow. My
Claudia,
husband Ricky and
Claudia.
I own.
Claudia, if you would address us, please.
Yeah, we own Crow's Market on Main at 728 East Main. And I guess I am wearing my rose-colored glasses today because I disagree with you. This is the first, the one and the only city commission or city staff that has ever reached out to us. Are they perfect? No. Are they doing everything that we want? No. Can homelessness be eradicated? No. We have been downtown 23 years, and from the moment that we opened our doors until today, homelessness has always been present. Has the face of homelessness changed? Yes, it has. Why has it changed? One word: addiction. Until we as a community don't address addiction, nothing is going to change. Everyone sitting here, everyone watching, knows somebody who has a drug addiction. You cannot reason with people who are addicted. It doesn't matter how many hands you offer to them. They're going to take it today, tomorrow they are not. They sell their food stamps for drug money. They break as many laws as we can enumerate. We all know that. But at the end of the day, what I ask you to remember is that these are human beings, okay? We can't lump them all in one category. We cannot do that. There are those that are homeless by choice, and yes, there are those that are homeless by choice. I have spoken with them. There are those that have become homeless due to some type of a life event, usually having to do with medical issues, can't afford to pay their doctor bills, and then there are those who are homeless because they are addicted to drugs, addicted to alcohol. As a community, we are doing nothing to help with that. So I am here today to encourage a call of action. The Avidas Foundation, St. Anthony's Hospital, our city commission, our police department, our city staff, and all of our citizens need to become involved in figuring out a way to help those that are facing addiction. We don't have treatment centers. We don't have mental help for them. We can feed them every day of the week. That is putting a Band-Aid on gangrene. Don't kid yourselves. Those are not the ways that we can effectively help these people to have a good life. There is no way until we address the core issue, which is addiction. I'll say that over and over and over. We are not going to solve this problem. I thank you for listening. I thank you for caring. I've had a couple of issues. All I had to do was make a phone call. Travis, the mayor, and Cami responded, because whether you know it or not, the majority of downtown businesses are owned by women. We are sitting out there facing this on a daily basis. But if you think homelessness is exclusive to downtown, then take your rose-colored glasses off and start looking around your town. It isn't just downtown. They are more visible downtown because there is nowhere to go. I am on the east end of downtown. Am I as affected as the lady that owns the lunchbox? No. There are no parks around me. There's nowhere for them to hang out or sit. None of that. Why are we facing this today? Because it's always been here and we've never addressed it. That is the core of all this problem right here. It has been ignored. It has been shoveled. I've never had a mayor or a commissioner or a city manager approach me and say to me, hey, how can we help? That has never happened. Is it perfect? No. Is it moving fast enough? No. But we are dealing with the government. We are dealing with red tape. It took decades to get to where we are. We are not going to clean it up in a week or a month or a year. We can only help those that want the help. How can we as citizens help? How can we as business owners help? Speak up. Become involved. For God's sakes, vote. The last election, we had 1,200 people in a city of 30+ thousand that voted. I had to earn my right to vote. I was not born in the U.S. I had to take the test so I could vote. If you do not become involved, well, you don't have the right to complain if you're not involved. I'm sorry. I plead to you, please stop the social media garbage. You are hurting us more than the homeless are. That is a fact. Our business is down 10% as opposed to a store in Earlsboro. Why? Because all you hear is how dangerous it is, what all the scum that you're going to see, etc., etc. I had to speak to a young man who was digging through my dumpster. And I had to watch him grab that garbage and eat it. Until you face that, shut up. I do not want to hear it. It is a horrifying experience. Why was he there? I don't have any idea. He would never look at me when I spoke to him, when I offered help. He made no eye contact whatsoever. He was young, obviously a drug user. I am not qualified to help him. All I can do as a business owner is have cameras, put up alarms, and call the police when illegal activity is taking place. Are they always going to respond? Probably not. We have a lot of new officers that are getting trained. It takes a while to learn. Negative attitude only brings negative outcomes. That is my point of view. We can be that island that handles the homelessness issue. We can be the leaders that other cities look to. We don't have to be followers. We don't have to stay in a negative state of mind. We can help. We can change this. Are we going to eradicate it? No way. There is no way that we are. I don't have to deal with feces or urinating people around my business. Have we seen drug deals go on? Yes, we have. Have we found needles? Yes, we have. How do we change all of that? We address the core issue again, addiction. I again call upon the Avitas Foundation, the hospital, our city leaders, our legislators to get together and have an honest conversation. I don't have statistics. I don't have slides. All I have is my personal experience. Thank you for listening, and please, Shawnee is a great place to live. We are not the only city that is experiencing homelessness. We are not. We have a leg up. We are working. We are talking. We're having honest conversations. Let's keep that up. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, ma'am.
I started this presentation off by saying that homelessness evokes very strong emotions. I would like to thank Claudia and Lee, and I think just in those two who are part of the downtown business community, you see the full spectrum. Claudia's call to action, which is so much better than my immediate next steps, and Lee's defeat. I am really grateful that Lee brought up the question of trespassing again. I cannot tell you how poorly understood that is. So I will try one more time. Trespassing. Our city police cannot go on private property and remove anyone. If we do so without the invitation of the property owner, we become trespassers ourselves. So if a property owner calls on us or a business owner calls on us and says, I would like this person trespassed from my property, police will absolutely come and support. If that person, after being notified that they are indeed trespassing, notification first, they come back, it still requires the property owner to push for a citation. Again, police cannot act without that additional piece. So although it may appear that the sign is not enough and the calling the police is not enough because they show up again, there is more to it. So trespassing is very poorly understood. At the same time, I do not want to make light of what Lee has said, that we have tried so much. We are working so hard. And we're still not there. So obviously, we need to do something different, because that same approach that has resulted in the situation that we currently face is not going to get us out of it. Again, I'll have Claudia write my title slides instead of immediate next steps. It'll be call to action. I like that so much better. You heard me speak of the proposed designated shelter site. We have no such thing. Without shelter, we can also not give the directive of, you cannot be in this public space, because we would end up in a big lawsuit. So we need to set up the designated shelter site. And in parallel, we will work on a prohibition of camping on public property. Our police can only enforce such prohibition if there is indeed an alternative site for them to be. The courts have proven over and over that homelessness in itself, being poor and not having a roof over your head, cannot be criminalized. So these two things have to go hand in hand. We cannot have the prohibition on camping on public property, no sleeping on the sidewalk, no pitching a tent in the middle of a park, unless we have the designated camp and shelter site. The other thing, again, greatly affecting downtown, because it has become the meal operations stop. It leaves behind trash. I understand we have wonderful human beings and groups who would love to help our homeless population by providing food. They do not quite realize what burden that places on downtown, on the nearby property owners, on the business owners, and also on city resources. So we are continuing to work, and maybe the fourth time is the charm, and we won't find any city codes that conflict with what we are drafting, because we want to make sure that we are getting it right. And then last but not least, you may have heard earlier that 8 out of 10 homeless are from Shawnee. You may have also heard that Erica said we don't really have drop-offs. We do have a few, and we're documenting, and we're contacting. And should they continue to do so, we have a lovely cease and desist letter that was drafted by our city attorney that will be dropped into their lap. I understand that other cities and towns, particularly smaller towns, struggle with this complex issue just as much as we do. What they probably did not know is that Erica is the only full-time employee that is funded with city funds, and then everything else is volunteer and donation-driven. And volunteers and donations reside in every single municipality, in every single small town, in every church. So even though a town may think that they don't have the resources, but Shawnee does, and they feel the need to drop somebody off, they should not. So those are the immediate steps that we are working on. There will be more. But the designated shelter site, the camping prohibition, and then the enforcement thereof will tremendously help our downtown. And I can tell you that something that also resonated very well as Claudia was speaking to it, we forget to highlight all of the great things Shawnee has. We don't talk about those. We literally, I mean, most city staff do this. I am totally guilty of that. We focus on the things we need to fix instead of the things we've already fixed. But by only speaking these negative things, we create the perception that Shawnee is not a wonderful, welcoming, great community. I understand this was a tremendous amount of information. City staff is absolutely ready to answer any questions you may have. And I know that with the things we have planned, we will move our homeless program forward. We will find a nonprofit to take it. We will work on making Shawnee Hall. It can be.
Do you like questions?
Should be tons of questions. At a minimum, we have Commissioner Flood's question. So if you would be so kind and repeat your question, I think we are at a point where we can really answer that.
It's going to sound like I'm bragging, but it's not. It's just me talking about who I am and what I do. I promise you that I promise you that I have picked up more trash, cleaned up more poo off the sidewalk, cleaned up more debris, hauled more stuff, given more money out of my own pocket than a significant number of people. But what I can tell you also is that I don't do it full time like our downtown business owners have to. I don't face it every day whenever I walk into my back door or go to put my open sign out and see someone sleeping in the alcove next to my business. I don't smell the urine. I don't see the trash. I don't hear the screams and the yells every day like they do. And I consider myself to be a pretty tough human being, and that would be very, very hard for me to experience every day whenever I all I was trying to do was create a good thing for my city and for my family and for the people that I love to serve and to work with. And so I first want to acknowledge that is so hard to do, and I thank you all for sticking with it and for being here and doing what you're doing and doing your best to create a service, to create a product, to create an environment for people to live and love and be part of this amazing town that we're in. And so my question is, and is still something that I truly hope that by a designated shelter site, by shoring up some of our ordinances and codes, by better education processes to not only our city employees but our officers and to out of town of individuals like this. It seems like as listen to this, it seems like we're just on the cusp of everybody kind of figuring stuff out, but it seems like we don't sometimes know exactly what the right call is or who the right call is to make. And I think that sometimes it seems like our folks are just kind of left out in the open all by themselves, and that seems pretty. And I know it's not intentional, and I know it's not not a good excuse because we don't have good answers and we don't have a good plan, but I can't sit around any longer and hear these families, these businesses, these individuals say, please help me, please help me, please help me, I don't know what to do. And so I'm here in this moment right now, just asking the other commissioners, asking the city staff, asking and the citizens, please be open-minded about designated shelter sites. Be intentional about sharing the good things that are happening. Don't give up on us. We're trying, but also we need support. We need good people stepping up and giving of their time and their efforts and their energies to do this, because if we spread this out over our city, if we spread this out over all of our extra time and extra energies and efforts, we can make amazing things happen. We can find the pride. Talked about this last week in our Built Environment Committee. We can find the pride that we've lost in our city because we know it's there. One of our amazing one of our amazing Built Environment Committee members said at one time, Shawnee won an award for the most beautiful city in Oklahoma. That's unbelievable. And that just makes me super proud to think that we could find that again. Mm-hmm. And so that is not a question so much as it is I think we can do better. And I know that the steps that we've taken seem like they've taken us backwards instead of forwards, but I believe that as I sit here, my job is to make sure that these immediate next steps, that there's some kind of action taken on them, and that we don't just sit back and in another 6 months come back and say we're doing, we can't do that any longer. So that's all I got.
I don't know how you answer that. You don't.
Time is of the essence.
Absolutely. Any questions? No, sir. That's not part of tonight's agenda. Any other questions? I did have. Sir, that's not. Sir, you're not welcome to right now. You're welcome to speak to any of the commissioners after the meeting, before the meeting, but it isn't. I apologize. Hopefully this will help. You're welcome to speak to any of us after the meeting, before meetings, any meeting. You can contact us all by email. No, sir, you may not. I'm sorry. Absolutely. That I can't answer for everybody. You were going to say, Joe, you were going to clarify something? No. Anyway.
As a downtown business owner, I have a little mic, guys. I know, hang on. I've got this short mic, but I have a projecting voice, so I'll use it. I own a restaurant in downtown Shawnee. I've been on both sides of the spectrum, from Claudia to Lee's perspectives, sometimes on a daily basis, from hopelessness to having a fire lit under me to make sure that I can do my part to change our downtown area. Downtown is not my board, so sometimes I don't speak up in the meetings because I don't want to overstep Travis's ward. But as a downtown business owner, this is an issue that affects me on a regular basis. I'm really encouraged by the presence of all of the community members in this room that I see and know, from property owners who are active in care to president of OBU who's here, to people that actually do run drug crisis centers and can help with those substance abuses. I think that collectively in this room, we've got people that are humanitarians who their hearts are truly in helping these people, connecting the resources to the people, loving them. My strength and my area of focus is my business. And then serving as a commissioner in the best capacity I can. I empathize with every business owner in the community, especially going through the last couple of years. When you're working so hard every day, it's very hard to be a business owner, and then you add on top of it any extra things. So the main thing that I see as a threat to my business, and I think that you guys would agree, is less about the safety issues, because I do see an active police presence downtown, and I believe that they have been doing a wonderful job to the best of their abilities and training, and they're actively training. And yes, there are new recruits that haven't gone through some of the training that they spoke about earlier. The active threat is people giving up and people not patroning the businesses downtown, people spreading the idea that it's unsafe to go to a business downtown, because it's not. We have businesses downtown. You can walk in, you can have a great sandwich at Lee's Place, you can get the best tomatoes at Crow's, you can come to my business if you want, but you can safely patron the downtown businesses. And there's a new generation of business owners down there putting all of their energy and time and money into the revitalization of the downtown. So some of the older people in the room who tell me, oh man, downtown used to be amazing. I didn't live here then, but I respect that. And I'm an active part of these people who want to carry that torch and continue to have an amazing downtown that we put a lot of pride into, cleanup efforts. So if we can get a little bit of enthusiasm from the community, patroning our businesses, visiting downtown. If you haven't been there for a long time, don't let the fact that we have some homeless people in our park who They have never approached me. I have never had a scary interaction with a single homeless person. I am a younger woman who closes up at nighttime, often after midnight. I do feel safe. The scary interactions I've had have been more with customers than anyone downtown. So if you haven't been downtown in a while, and that's not the only place the homelessness issue is, would you please consider visiting again? That's how you could help. And then with our community partners here, when Andrea asked, what questions do you have? I think the staff has done a wonderful job telling us where we're at, and that's disheartening because it's hearing the ugly truth. Here's where we are, but they've got plans in place and they are working. And when I see Andrea getting emotional at the end, I know it's because her staff's working so hard and she sees actively the community partners. However, not everybody in the community sees that on a daily basis. So that's why these conversations are important. The Public Works Department has their own thing they have to think about. The Methodist Church has a different perspective and a different reason for being involved. Let's all come together, and the question we should all be asking is, what can I do to make this better? And so as we were listening, I thought, what can I personally do to help here? So we're kind of limited on this stage, so if we're not voting on something, what could I do in my personal life? And I started making a list, and that's to make sure I can take ownership of whatever I can do. I'm hoping that as you sit here tonight and you are someone that is connected to a nonprofit, maybe something went off for you in your mind and you thought, wow, we could be that missing link that Andre is talking about. We need to step up as a church, as a nonprofit, as an organization. But I think in this room lies the solution, and we have a powerful group of people and a wonderful staff, and everyone sitting up here really cares about this issue. If you would like to speak about homelessness, downtown issues, whatever, I would be more than happy to speak with any of you, give you my number, we can meet over coffee, whatever it would be. If you would like to speak about these issues further, I'd love to hear ideas from the community as well. We have had multiple meetings in the past where citizens have spoken, so I'm sure the staff would be, open to discussing those issues as well. But if we did that tonight, we'd be here until 3:30 in the morning, so I do understand that. But please, let's work together, and I will do my part however I can, and I'd love to help you connect with other people to facilitate some change. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments?
I might make a comment and then ask a couple of technical questions that I just had pop up in my mind. I appreciate Mr. Vondran talking about balance, because I think in many ways we have to start this discussion with balance and understanding that I have no more or fewer constitutional rights myself than our unhoused neighbors. And so under the law, we're equal, and even if our behavior isn't. And so understanding how that applies, it's tough. And I think I try to put the filter on it of, what if it was my dad or what if my child? How would I want the community to treat them when we look at that issue? Because we need accountability, but we also need love. And that's a really challenging issue to look at. But a couple of questions. If you haven't been with us before, we're talking about the designated camping spot. That comes out of a ruling out of the Ninth Circuit. This maybe triggered a little more, or targeted a little more at Joe. The Ninth Circuit controlling ruling that requires us to designate a spot. We can't just decide it's Tuesday, let's clear out downtown of all belongings and people. We have to have a designated camping spot. What does that bar look like to clear? Because we've talked, Andrea talked about Dockery Park tonight. What does the law require us to have? It appears to me that the city ordinances require more than maybe the federal law. How can we get to that bar? Because I think we need definitions. Everything, I think for years, part of our problem is we've talked theoretically about we need to do something. I think to Cammie's point, like, we probably all need to stop saying somebody should do something and say, what can I do? And I think we can get a lot of resolution. But talk about the bars we need to clear. If we're going to come up with action steps, I think we need to know where the bar is legally to meet those requirements and not end up on the wrong side of a lawsuit.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Matthews. I'm going to go back to that term balance, and then I'm going to piggyback onto what you said next, which is you have the same rights as our unhoused neighbors. We have a code of ordinances. We have a code of ordinances that we put in place to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Shawnee. And because of that, while it may be a higher standard than what the Ninth Circuit has put in place, it is the standard that we have set for ourselves. And to create a lesser standard for unhoused among us would trigger the very lawsuit that you have expressed and rightfully so concern for. As I've sat here this evening and processed a lot of this, as everyone in the room has, we've talked about how one life event or misstep in the life of an individual could lead to an unhoused state. Well, I think the same is true from a city standpoint, and I think we're very familiar with this, having just gone through a significant weather event and the destruction that came from that. Luckily, we've been in a position to be able to ride through that. But the type of lawsuits that you're referencing and the amount of damages could be just as devastating to the municipality, because those are not things that insurance cover. When a federal court determines that we have violated civil rights, there can be significant monetary penalties for the municipality involved. And so again, we've set that standard for ourselves. That standard should not be adjusted. So when Andrea references the fact that our code will require certain upgrades at that facility to meet that standard, those are the standards we've set for ourselves.
I think my follow-up to that would be, could we get, and I say we, meaning the commission, but also the community, a clear, and this would be from staff, a clear definition of what it will take to meet those, and not tonight, obviously, but a quick determination on what those standards we need to meet look like, because I think we have people that are ready for action, and it doesn't have to be all of city staff, installing the bathrooms or whatever the things need to be. If we can put together a list of things that need to happen, I think we have a group of people that are ready to move and take action, but we need to do a good job of communicating what those are and how we can work together. That's just my request. There's a fascinating, we're not the only ones wrestling with this. There's city of Oklahoma City. If you Google Oklahoma City homeless response, I think the third one down, there's a fascinating presentation of the Oklahoma City City Council from April that basically goes through exactly what we've gone through tonight on a much larger scale. But it gets into cities in our communities or in our region, what they've done. And clearly housing is the option. And I think we have some willing participants. We just need to bring them to the table on affordable housing and what that can look like in our community. I don't want to get in the weeds on this one, but we know we have a problem in the park across, we've talked about it. And I don't want to cause division with this, but I think it's a question we need to look at. The park and the library area is obviously a high concentration of concern. Someone mentioned it tonight, the Wi-Fi and the belief that the library has a funding that requires access. Can we evaluate, or have we weighed in and given or looked at that grant to weigh in on the legal aspect? Because to me, I'm just goofball up here, thinks he maybe knows a little bit about the law. Providing service when you're not open seems unreasonable. I don't think that would be the expectation of any other business, to provide service when you're not open to the public. And so have we reviewed that, or could we review that and partner with the library to look at like, what are the reasonable expectations?
If I may make a suggestion that would address this issue, but be more encompassing. We have heard this evening too that job search will require internet. A lot of job applications are online. Without internet, this really cannot be done. Even though it is not currently contained in our city code, but a designated site should also have a Wi-Fi, because if we're truly coming with wraparound services to help folks move out of homelessness, that means they have to be able to request documents, receive documents, look for jobs, apply for jobs. And so I just so happened to have that conversation about the Wi-Fi with our wonderful Shawnee library manager and her boss as well. The library tries to provide access to all of Shawnee. And there are, and Courtney, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there are families who do not have that kind of access. So they sit in the parking lot after dark, after the library is closed, and use this service. It just so happens that on the other side, on the park side, we do have homeless who also use that service. So a designated site absolutely has to have Wi-Fi, because turning it off at night at the library may impact some of our most needy families who require it as well. So yes, we could certainly request the grant documents, but I think it would also speak to the larger need within the community to have that kind of access that would be possibly be impacted.
And in addition, the designated camping site, I mean, the entire goal of that, I mean, that there's a lot of goals, but I mean, one major goal is to get people out from underneath the cover at the library, out of Celebration of Life Park, get people, quit camping in alleys and so forth in downtown Shawnee, and get them in a place where that can be done and not cause the problems that the public is experiencing right now. So I think that's an important step. It's not an easy step. I mean, none of us like this situation. We're all aware of this situation. We all want to make it better, but I think that would be a big step to making it better. So hopefully that's encouraging for folks to hear that we're looking for a place where that situation can be better managed.
And providing that shelter, providing that initial stability then allows us to bring in the wraparound services that work towards addressing the multitude of other issues that surround homelessness. Food and shelter are the most basic of requirements. Everything else can only come thereafter.
Right. What other questions do you guys have? I had a couple kind of detailed questions for Erica, if that would be okay. And you answered most of what I wanted to ask you, but I know if you would say again how many folks you've been successful in moving out of homelessness, and then is there any way you could give any more specifics? And I don't want names or anything like that because that's none of our business, but I mean, could you give any more specific on the individuals that you've gotten off of the streets?
Absolutely. Since I've started with the program, we have moved 89 people into permanent housing. 44 people have been temporarily housed, meaning we were able to put them in some kind of transitional housing or with family members. 20 people went to institutions like rehabs or psychiatric facilities for treatment. And 47 people went to other destinations, like people that were stranded here we sent back. Like the gentleman who was an over-the-road trucker, got too many speeding tickets, and his company took him off the truck in Shawnee, America. Went and got 2 jobs so he could try and get back to his family in Ohio, and we were able to put him on a bus and send him back where he came from. So, we've been able to really make an impact, even with our limited resources, and it's thanks to the roundtable members who are working on this.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Anything else? Lauren, you got something?
Oh, I've got a lot.
Okay.
But I'm not, I mean,
might have
it's
had a question there.
niche, very in the weed stuff. I'm looking up stuff on continuum of care.
Okay.
So if someone else wants to go.
Okay. Anybody else got anything else? Anything else? If we don't really have it, was there anything else that you guys had to present, or? Okay, that was it. Okay. I want to thank so many people for coming out here tonight. I want to thank everybody that's been working on this situation. You know, we're going to have disagreements. We're going to have disagreements on how this all ought to play out. But, you know, we all have the same goal, and that is to get our homeless number just as low as we possibly can. It has been said by more than one person tonight, we will never get to 0. We will never get there, okay? Not in human history has that ever happened, and I don't expect that we're going to be the first ones to do that. I hope we are. I really do. But that's probably not likely, because people fall into homelessness every day, and you've heard that tonight. I mean, some people it was due to the tornado. I know when I was working, you know, I volunteered and worked over at our warming shelter. And there was a bunch of folks that had just fallen into homelessness because, you know, their apartment burned and they had nowhere else to go. You know, I met a lady over there that had moved to Oklahoma from California where she had a job, and she came here to take care of her mom. Now, she was probably about my age. And so she gives up her job and she comes here to be a full-time caretaker of her mom, and their mom dies. And then guess what? That house goes away, and this lady's now homeless. All kinds of things happen. There are some people that, yeah, that's just the life they've chosen, you know, and that's fine, but we don't want them, you know, impacting our lives in a negative way, right? That's not what any of us want. So we want to try to make this situation as good as we can. There have been some, I think, some encouraging things tonight. You know, you've heard about, you know, hopefully we've got a place where we can legally have people go. We cannot chase them out of the park legally unless we have a place for them to go. And as Joe has told us, and he can say much better than I can, you cannot tell them that they have to leave a public space unless you have a space for them to go. And the courts have been very clear in that. And then we don't want to run afoul of that because it's going to cost us in our pocket. An attorney somewhere is going to pick that up in a heartbeat, and there's all kinds of precedent that they're going to hold our feet to the fire. Pardon me, and it's going to be an expensive thing for us to do. So, as Cammie said very eloquently, let's all work together. None of us are going to agree on every step of the process as we go through, but there is a lot of effort underway. You may not see it every day, but I can promise you it's happening. I mean, Andrea and I talk about this, I don't know, probably more than she likes, and city staff deals with this every single day. We will make this better. Erica has been able to demonstrate that we have made progress. Yeah, you don't see it on Main Street yet, and I don't like that any better than anybody else. But we are going to keep working on it, and we are going to get better. I promise you, we are going to. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming out. I wish we had this many people at every one of our meetings, I really do. And with that, we are adjourned.